This has been a pressing issue for me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it or not, but yeah, I just wanted to touch on it a bit. I'm not religious at all, but I do consider Catholicism as a part of my identity. I guess you could say a part of how I grew up. I've read the Bible, I celebrate Christmas and Easter and the Christian meaning of those holidays. So the way I learned is that, Israel is the Holy Land. It's the Jews' ancestral homeland. If you read the Bible, which goes back 5,000 years, Jews resided in Israel. Jesus was born there, and Jesus was Jewish himself. So my stance on the whole thing is that I am on the side of Israel and the Jewish people. So yeah, I wanted to get into that. So I do relate to the Jewish people as a biracial in a sense that it seems like people dislike Jews for no reason. People come up with conspiracies like the Jews are eternal enemies, they are deceivers, which, of course, is just utter nonsense. As a biracial person, I'm mixed with European, African American. I feel like sometimes it's kind of similar with biracial people. People sometimes think like, oh, we're up to no good. People can't trust us. We're evil, demonic. We shouldn't even exist. So yeah, we do get discrimination from random people we don't even know, we didn't do anything to, and from people we're just trying to do right by. A lot of Jewish people are biracial or mixed themselves in a sense that they're mixed with Jewish and European, such as the case with Ashkenazi Jews. Yeah, Judaism is a religious belief, but it's also an ethnicity. Like in a DNA test, Jewish will come up as an ethnicity. So yeah, I looked at some Jewish and some Israeli DNA tests, and like for Ashkenazi Jews, like I've seen a lot where it'll be like 35, 40, 45% Ashkenazi Jewish. So yeah, that's kind of similar to like an American biracial, because like for example me, I'm about 40% African American, and then the rest pretty much European. And I looked at some Israeli DNA tests, and a lot of those will be a mix of like Jewish, Middle Eastern, North African. So yeah. So with mixing, with the Jewish people, it seems like they try to carry on like the Jewish ancestry and identity, kind of like with mixing with African Americans. We had the like kind of how we had like the one drop rule and things of that nature. So yeah, with discrimination with Jews, there is a religious dynamic. There's also a part of this being different from the norm, being a minority in the world. Like as a biracial, I get this like it's like an isolating place to be in. Like it kind of puts you in a vulnerable position. It feels like maybe other minorities, maybe like atheists, like maybe like atheists get this same effect as well. Maybe not as much today because your religiosity is more common. But yeah, I remember a while back I would sometimes look at like alt-right or white supremacist forums and things like that, and they seem to have a thing for Jews, which is really odd for me. They seem to have this idea like, these weird conspiracy theories like, oh, Jews are controlling the media. Jews push left-wing media, this sort of stuff. Yeah, and it also seemed like it was a pure white thing. Like they had the idea that Jews weren't pure white. So yeah, so that was like on the far right. And then, I remember seeing like Nick Cannon and Kanye West saying, crap basically, about Jews. And it seemed like it was more of like a religious conspiracy kind of thing, you know, Jews, being the so-called chosen people, or whatever, and kind of like some kind of religious dissonance or religious, sort of issue like that. And then you have some Christians and some Muslims who have issues with Jews for religious reasons. They believe in different things. Jews don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. So to me, it's just stupid. I believe in freedom of religion, obviously. I believe in the Constitution. People have the right to believe or not believe, practice, not practice, whatever they want. The only reason I go to church every once in a while, the only reason I celebrate Christmas and Easter is because that's how I grew up, basically. I'm not a religious person. So, I think that's, the case for most people. I don't think they're religious fundamentalists. I think it has more to do, with their culture, how they grew up, things of that nature. You're not hurting or harassing anyone else, it's not any sort of issue to me. So, this whole issue was brought into light by the October 7, 2023 horrific and brutal Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel. So Hamas stands for Islamic Resistance Movement. So Hamas is a religious militant group. They believe in being martyrs and torturing and killing people. So Hamas is the leader of Palestine. So Palestine is a territory that Israel shares borders and land with. So I'm just going to take a look at some history. So if you look at the history, Israelis and Palestinians both have a claim to the land. So most Jews were forced to leave Israel by the Roman Empire, resettled in Europe as slaves. This was around the early first millennia. They didn't go down easy at all. They had huge losses. And so thereafter, the Romans called the area of Israel Palestine. And the area became inhabited by Arabs. So Jews were stateless, I guess you could say, for about 2 millennia, living in Europe, Russia, and Arab and Muslim nations. So when I first heard about Palestine, I was like, what is that? It sounded like a name for an ancient empire or something like that. I think I vaguely remember learning about the Philistines in school, but that's a different word. So growing up, I had 2 friends from Israel. So my one friend, she was quite fair, and she had brown hair, but she looked like how you would imagine someone from Bethlehem looking. And I had another friend from Egypt. She had the same phenotype, but she was from Egypt. She was fair, creamy color, and the same kind of like brownish, kind of curlyish, wavyish hair. And then I had another from Israel. So she practiced Judaism and Islam. So one of her parents was Jewish, one of her parents was Muslim. So she was also from Israel. So I was like, okay, yeah, I know where Israel is, that's the Holy Land and stuff, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, those religious landmarks. She had like dark red hair. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone with red hair like that. And she had green eyes and was light skinned. And then several years later on Facebook, my friend, she has a really fair complexion with the brownish hair. I saw her competing in Miss Arab. She posted it on Facebook. So I was looking at that, and yeah, the contest she was in was called Miss Arab, and then she had the banner, and it said Palestine. I'm like, what's Palestine? I thought she was from Israel. So, and then, it sort of clicked, and I wanted to look into what is the origin of Palestine? So in the early 1930s, there was World War II, there was Nazism, there was the Holocaust. So, yeah, this was the Holocaust was from about 1933 to 1945. So in response to this, Britain wanted to aid the Jews. They wanted to come up with, some sort of aid and solution for them. So with the UN, the United Nations, they came up with the idea to get the Jews to their ancestral homeland, which was Israel. So yeah, they helped set up the Jews in Israel, and Israel became a official state in 1948. So the Arab population didn't want to accept the existence of Israel, so 5 Arab nations came together and declared war on Israel. So because of that war, many of the Palestinians moved out of that area to different Arab nations because of the fighting. So the Jews weren't looking to overthrow the Arabs. They were looking to live together peacefully. They were, a small population at the time. So Israel has tried repeated times to make peace, to find a two-state solution. But the Palestinian side has always stuck to one idea, that they don't want a two-state solution and they don't want Israel. So people saying it's like what was done to the Native Americans and to Africa, colonization ideology. To me, it's like, it's different than that, and each situation should be looked at as unique before drawing generalizations. Like, there is a historical and religious significance here. Like, the majority of the world's population is Christian, and who lived in the Christian Holy Land, Israel. It was Jews, not Muslims. There's also the fact that Jews don't have their own land or state, and they also came while being persecuted. Some wars were caused by conquest, some by disputes, people trying to escape persecution or looking for better opportunities. If there is opportunity for a better life, people are going to move towards that. You can see that in Europe. People moved to America, Australia. You can see immigration from Africa and the Middle East into Europe. That's just how it is. So, there's this idea going around that Israel is a colonial state, that the Jews are actually just white Europeans, and the Palestinians are actually brown and the indigenous people of that area. While it's true that some Jews are a majority European, that's because they existed in Europe for centuries and mixed with Europeans. There are also a lot of Middle Eastern and North African Jews as well. So no, it's not like it was just some random white European settlers. Jews have, significant ties to that land, both historical and religious. So the idea that Palestinians are the indigenous people of that area and, they're all brown is incorrect. The indigenous people of that area are Semitic, so that includes Jews and Arabs. Palestine didn't exist until Rome, the Roman Empire, exiled Jews from that area and, drew some lines on a map over it and called it Palestine. The reality is that region is, it's in between Eurasia, North Africa, and the Middle East. So in that area, there's people of different shades. There are light-skinned people, there are very fair people, there are browner and tanner people. So people in that region come in all different shades. The geography of that region is right in between where the racial categorization of the people changes, and yeah, a lot of the populace looks the part. Yeah, I've met people from that region who have light skin, lighter hair, light eyes. They'll get a DNA test and it'll trace them to that region. Most of their DNA can be traced to that region. I've also met people from that region, they're browner, they have dark features, and they get a DNA test and their DNA gets traced to that region. So yeah, people look all different ways in that region, and yeah, it's not surprising due to the geographical location. And a part of this is, I think this whole thing goes back to this idea that Jesus was actually black or whatever, because I think some scientists came out a few years ago and said he might have been more olive skin. I didn't know they meant black olives, but yeah, I've actually met people who are from that area, Egypt, Israel, Lebanon, around that region. And they have the phenotype that Jesus is, that he's often depicted as having, like creamy white skin, colored eyes, brownish hair. I've met people with that phenotype, from those areas, and they look every bit like, they came from Bethlehem or something like that. They're very Arab in appearance, even though, they have that sort of coloring. So yeah, the idea that all people from that region are all browner skin because it's next to Africa is not correct. It is, Israel is right next to Egypt, but people in Egypt are phenotypically Arab. There are some, darker skinned Egyptians as well. There are browner skinned Egyptians. The darker skinned Egyptians could have, migrated there, because for the most part, people in North Africa are Arab in appearance, but again, they come in different skin tones. There are browner, Arabs. There are light skinned Arabs. There are fair Arabs. And yeah, the same thing pretty much holds true in that region near Israel. Yeah, I think that Jesus, he could have been browner skin, but he also could have been light skin with lighter hair and green eyes. I've seen both of those phenotypes in that region from, people from that area. I've seen them with different sort of phenotypes. So yeah, there are lighter skinned Palestinians and there are browner skinned Palestinians. So on to this talk about colonialism, invasions, conquests, lines have changed on maps since the beginning of history. Arabs did this to Persia, Persia did this to Rome, Rome did this across the Mediterranean region, Mongolia did this across Eurasia. People like to bring up colonization, mostly focusing on Europeans, of the Americas, Africa, Oceania. I think, they were just doing what was best for their family, They were coming to Europe, they were looking for, better life, freedom. They went to Africa, because there was a lot of resources there that they could capitalize off of. So yeah, and the fact of the matter is, Native Americans, they fought each other for territory. So it's just the course of history. A fact is a fact, and a result is a result. And people bring up Africa, colonization, and slaves. Well, again, I think that they were, trying to do what was best for their family. That Africa had a lot of resources, and Africa had the slave trade. So it wasn't like Europeans were just coming into Africa and kidnapping people. Slaves were being traded for goods by other Africans. Europe participated in the slave trade. Arabs participated in the slave trade. Asians participated in the slave trade. So yeah, it wasn't just, European people. So somebody came and fought and they won land, and that's how life is. I get tired of people crying, trying to blame everyone else for the fact that you lost and now you want to be mad. Like, either fight or don't, and lose or win. That's how it is. It's not wrong if someone fights for something and wins, regardless of what side they're on. I'm an American. I live in America. That is a product of colonization. So how am I going to confront anyone else for doing the same thing? How am I supposed to think it's not wrong for you to think I'm not supposed to exist in the country I live in and I'm not supposed to live here? How is that going to convince me of anything? Like, it would be hypocritical. So maybe you should try to convince other countries, because I don't think you'll get very far with Americans, as many of us enjoy living here. It seems entitled, like, I'm losing a war I started. Someone gotta be sad for me. Someone should be helping me. Like, no, I don't believe in that. Colonialism is a product of war. When you fight another country and you win, what is the prize? The prize is land and territory in many cases. It's not wrong, and it's not ethnocentricity. So, yeah, I understand why Israel fights, and it seems like a good idea to fight for and live in Israel. There are 49 Muslim majority countries. Muslims have a quarter of the world's population, but this tiny little country, Israel, is causing all these problems, really. So the Jews can't have their own state that they have significant ties to. Since that is the case and the two groups can't land on a solution, then there is a war. I don't think we should be interfering. I think we should be minding our own business. War is horrible, No one wants to see people getting killed. No one wants to see soldiers dying. But what are you supposed to do if you have a militant government targeting you, invading your country, wanting to take over? You don't want to live under their rule, Israel is one of our main allies, and I agree with having allies with countries that have similar values to us, and who are also supportive to us. Like, say, for example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think it's, a good idea to show some sort of resistance, because what if you have like a dictatorship, and they just start taking over. They start taking over more and more land, and then you have this big superpower, and then say we're still over here as the United States, and we no longer have, as many allies, and then we get targeted, So, yeah, that's how I see that is working out. So, yeah, I think we should have allies with countries that are also, democracies, have the same sort of values, because, like, I don't want to live in a theocracy, which many of the Islamic states are. I believe in separation of church and state, democracy, human rights, and freedoms. So why should I support Palestine? What is Palestine doing for me? How are they benefiting me? They aren't. They don't benefit me. It has nothing to do with me. So why am I supposed to care if they don't do anything for me in return? So yeah, I don't agree with pro-Palestine or these protests. I don't get where people get all this time to do all these protests. When I was a teenager, when I was in college, I was spending all my time, in school, studying, working, you know. So, yeah, I don't see these protesters as pro-Palestine or nutty left-wingers. I see people who feel like they don't have an outlook on life, like I see people who don't feel supported or they feel alienated. So I think America needs to look at where we're going wrong to get these sorts of results. We need to figure out where we're going wrong as a society. I think a lot of people are protesting for, Jews and Arabs and Muslims to live together and, for the safety of the civilians. So, yeah, I agree with that, of course, but I don't think that Israel is on the wrong here. So I don't know why these people are protesting in favor of Palestine and not in favor of Israel. I don't agree that there are war crimes, etc., etc. It's a war. You're going to fight however you want to fight, and that's how you're going to do it. Some people are going to die when it comes to a war. Like when Ukraine was invaded by Russia, Ukraine had an exit strategy set up for their civilians and the surrounding countries. So, yeah, so what exactly is the issue that that this wasn't possible for the Palestinian civilians? So, yeah, I agree that there are war crimes being committed, but by Hamas, because they set up base and under hospitals, schools, to make it look like Israel is committing war crimes. So, yeah, the problem here is that the Gaza Strip of Palestine has been turned into a base for terrorism. The purpose of which is supposed to be a constant attack on Israel. They have no interest in recognizing Israel or disavowing terrorism. They don't have any peace process. They don't think that Israel should exist. That's why Israel instituted the blockade, because any Israel to them is an occupation. So that's why they continue with the bombardment, the harassment, the attacks. So Israel retaliates as it should be protecting its citizens. Why would you blame Israel for that? That's ridiculous. If you want to change your standards to whatever you want, why wouldn't you expect Israel to do the same thing? When Israel retaliates, these Palestinians play the victim. So, yeah, it's always this one directional thing. They cry about genocide and apartheid while calling for it against the Israelis. There are Arabs that live and work in Israel, and they have the exact same rights and opportunities as the other Israelis. So, yeah, Israel is 73% Jewish and 21% Arab. Why do they make out like they are victims and they can do whatever and everything is justified because Israel is, the so-called oppressor. Should we look at Gaza and be like, you know what, they are oppressing their citizens, so everything we do to them is justified. So no standards to be held to and be accountable for. So no, I don't think that Israel is at fault here. This is a land issue. This is a religious issue that is going both ways, not to the extreme of terrorism on the side of Israel, and that's the whole issue. Israel being at the risk of terroristic attacks and protecting itself. The thing with Hamas is it's not something you can get rid of. It's an ideology. So the best they can do is control it like crime. There's just no justification at all. It shows far more intent than freedom fighting. So yeah, if you pose a terroristic threat, equate that to making a criminal threat. You have police in your life, you get apprehended, you get locked in prison. So, yeah, like I said, a solution has been offered many times, a two-state solution. They haven't settled on a solution, so Israel has a wall up until an adequate peace agreement can be made.